Sorry, I am down a rabbit hole that has nothing to do with this, so it'll just all get cut.
I mean, most things have nothing to do with this, including most of what we talk on this show has nothing to do with the show.
I was trying to figure out the tiebreaker, so I see this story that Boise State will host the Mountain West Championship game, except to give it its full name, because you got to hashtag for the brand, the 2024 Old Trapper Mountain West Football Championship.
See, that's where we're going wrong. We need to have a fucking, the Fairly KickAss podcast sponsored by Jack Link's Beef Jerky.
How did you know Old Trapper was beef jerky?
I had no idea. Never heard of that name in my entire life.
That's why I looked it up.
Brand synergy right off the rip. That's what we do here. On the Fairly Beef Jerky podcast. Oh, God. Well, now that everyone, including myself, is very hungry for dried meat snacks, welcome to the Fairly Kick-Ass podcast. You got Zach, you got Dan, you got Jay, and you have a lot of vitriol that's going to be coming your way in this episode. Not from us, maybe from us, but more so from the songs that we are going to talk about. We are doing our Rush concept, which is short for Mount Rushmore. We take our best four blahs, our best for whatever's the topic is, and we present them. We come up with a consensus on the show of what we all agree on is the Fairly Kick-Ass Mount Rushmore of blah. And then we throw it back to you listeners to tell us whether we missed the mark, what we got right, what we should have put in, what we should have taken out. We'll tell you exactly how to do that later in the show. But before we get there, we got to tell you exactly what the topic is. And this topic is diss tracks.
I only have one brief correction for you.
Oh, please.
Because we do have to pick up to a theme. So this is, in fact, the Fairly Kick-Ass ConAgra Foods Rush.
Presented by Wendy's. If we get sued, at least we get good press.
I'm going to stop this night now before I get in any trouble. Yeah, exactly.
Well, bad press, but it's still good press for us at this point.
They're not paying us yet. There's no reason they could sue us, so it's fine.
That's the way to think about it. Yet. It'll happen. They just don't know it yet.
The other reason I'm going to stop because the other company I was going to try it with was Northrop Grumman, and while I think it would be hilarious, and they probably would have the money, and I hope they would find us hilarious, I also don't want to find out what the business end of a knife missile is like. So stop me now.
You got to do what you got to do for the brand, I get it. What did y'all do for this episode? How did you approach it? What were kind of just some of your general takeaways before we jump into them?
Oh, that's a tough one to lead off with. I kind of want to build to it rather than fair. Well, because I had two different concepts and one of them led to the other one.
Oh, interesting.
So I landed on a thing, but I will be talking about some of the other ones as I go.
Nice. Yeah, color me intrigued.
Yeah.
Dan, did you kind of feel the same vein of kind of one leading you to the next, or did you have?
No, I made it pretty simple. The assignment was diss tracks, so I went back into my head to think of the most blistering disses I could think of in music, and that's kind of where I went.
Well, then, why don't you kick us off then? Give us one of your four. Now, keep in mind, these are not in order of 1 through 4. These are just 1A, 1B, etc. So, yeah, with that, hit us up with your first selection.
Can I just do the easiest then first?
Please.
Okay, because then the one that does deserve up in number 1, because the greatest of all time deserves to be on Mount Rushmore. It's Tupac and Hit 'Em Up. I mean, Tupac responds to Biggie's "Who Shot Ya?" after he, in fact, was shot. There's actually an incredible story behind this whole song anyway, just to get here. I mean, Tupac thought that Biggie and Diddy, which all of a sudden it also seems kind of current too, but thought that the two knew that he was about to get hit. Didn't directly say, "You did it, but I think you knew it was going to happen." And then a whole bunch of stuff happened, and that just fueled his inferno of a delivery here. I mean, it took the West Coast, East Coast war to a whole new high, really. And the craziest part about the whole track is it's a second draft. There was an original that he was gonna put out. Suge Knight wanted him to drop it, and Tupac said, wait. And someone leaked it to Diddy. So Diddy took the beat from the original and put out a song off his label. And that, you might say, Tupac took personally. So then he went back into the studio and recut the verses, basically attaching a hit of C4 to every one of his razor sharp barbs, amping up the violence and going after like anyone associated with Biggie and Diddy. Like Lil Kim got some, Junior Mafia got some, Diddy of course got some, Chino XL got some, Mobb Deep got some, Jay-Z kind of lucked out because he got some in the original, but was to just push to the wayside when he was like, yeah, you're not involved. But everybody else involved was not safe. And like I said, there's a deeper story around this that's far more interesting. Unfortunately, it doesn't end well for anyone involved.
Nope.
But the track itself is like the pinnacle, and that's why it deserves a spot there.
And I would add that it's an absolutely great track too. Like that's important for this as well. Like it's not just that the diss is harsh and that it's explicit. Like he's very specific in what he says, but it's a good track.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one thing to just sit here, like one of us could just sit here and run off, 4 minutes worth of insults. Doesn't make it entertaining or worth going back to and listening again. But they also put together a fire track to go behind it.
Now, would y'all rather be like Biggie and Puffy and getting the majority of bars in the song? Or would you rather be like you mentioned Chino XL, who gets fuck you too, and that's it? Like, it just feels cold. It feels colder than the rest of the song. It's like, you're not even worth a quarter of a bar, bro. Like, get the fuck out of here.
In that particular brand of warfare, I think I'd rather be a side note.
Yeah, if I had the choice here, I'd rather just catch one stray. Thank you very much.
I think you both put it perfectly. Like this was not a beef. This was not a let's talk about each other on our song. This was a war. This was a conflict. This had serious and, as we saw later on, very grave consequences for multiple people involved. Not just Pac and Big, but there were multiple people that experienced violence and lost their lives out of this conflict. Like this was. I totally agree with everything both of you said. This is the depiction of a war between two sides, and it's a great depiction, and it's a great song in a vacuum too, which is why it was on my list as well.
I didn't put it on mine just for the sake of, because I knew it was going to be on at least one of yours. So I have it on my short list, but I didn't put it on my main list because of that. If none of y'all had said it, by the time we got around to the end, I was going to switch it up and add it, but nice. I wanted to get some other songs in here.
I'll put you down as a half.
Yeah, there you go.
So 2.5, that one's probably going to get through. We're not going to do the deliberations until the very end. So I'm kind of just prognosticating here, but Jay, hit us up with what you do have your first choice on your list.
I'll take it a little bit of a different route because I have a feeling that a good chunk of what we talk about today is going to be in a similar vein. So I'm going to bounce it to a different direction for a minute and talk about a diss track from the 90s that was obviously a diss track from the get, but not necessarily who was supposed to bear the brunt of the diss until a few years later. And that's Alanis Morissette's You Ought to Know. As you know, interestingly enough, she's not the one who declared who the song is about. He owned up to it all on his own. Before she had said anything, Dave Coulier was like, yep, that one's about me. Of course, he was 30 and she was 18 when they were together. So there's a thing. But it is a vicious diss track. It is full of emotion, full of anger, and it's just a fire song from an amazing artist.
I was fist pumping in the background because that was vindication for me putting that on my short list, because that is an absolutely resplendent diss track. And it's what it is. Like there's no, like there's no other way to put it. This is a diss track through and through, dyed in the wool.
Yeah.
Very true. I didn't have it on even my short list because just announced counter diagnosis, leave him alone a little bit.
No, great choice. Love the thinking outside the box too. That's really cool. Excited to see what comes further outside of your box in your later picks. But I will go ahead and skip hit 'em up since we already talked about that and go on to my second choice. Now, we've been talking about Drake in the sense of having a beef pretty much for the entire spring/summer of this year of 2024. This is not that. This is a different beef. There have been many beefs that many people have had with Drake over the years, as I've noticed. It's one of those, like, if you run into one asshole, you ran into an asshole, et cetera, et cetera. You see where I'm going with that. The beef from this year, which I have a hunch we're going to cover at some point, was one that he probably maybe didn't win. This beef also was one that he probably maybe didn't win. And let's be real, when the cover art of the track in question shows you in blackface, you probably lost before anyone said a single word. Pusha T did have words to say after that, and they were really vicious on the story of Adidon. As these things are wont to go, there was lead up with Pusha dissing Drake in a track on his album Daytona, a great album, by the way. Drake responding in kind with a diss track, which weirdly was more of a diss track against Kanye West than it was against Pusha T. But Pusha still decided that, hey, this is where we're going with this. So you started this. I'm going to end this. Among other just vicious, brutal bars in this track was the re-exposing of the fact that Drake had a then secret child, or at least confirmation of said fact. It was something that was already addressed, I think maybe like a TMZ article from like a year prior, Drake vehemently denying the claims. And after this track, I believe on a track on the album Scorpion, I can't remember which track it was, but Drake did eventually kind of mention that, yes, this is true. I do have a son named Adonis. Which, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong at all with having a child. It's a beautiful thing. It's cool as hell. But just the fact that you had this thing that this other rapper came in and essentially blew up your spot about, and also shit on your dad a little bit in the process too. That was a whole thing. But Pusha did not have any desire to have a retort to this. And I don't believe there ever was a retort. I believe this pretty much ended things, and nothing was spoken of it again.
Yeah, that's an age-old beef. This may as well be the mecca of beefs for those particular artists. So I did not put this on any of my lists, mostly because I couldn't figure out where to begin.
Yeah.
I guess you could pick like which song out of all these diss tracks was your favorite, but there's so many to choose from that I just didn't.
Yeah, it was one that I don't think got as much press necessarily as this year's installment, we'll say. Right. I think the thing that got the most press was Drake's son Adonis, not necessarily the tracks that led to that. But yeah, there was no shortage of volleys being tossed on both sides.
Yeah.
But once again, and like another song I think we're going to talk about, this was the end. Like, after this is when that song came out on Scorpion, and he's like, yeah, I got a son with a former French porn star. And you would have thought that Drake would have learned from this, because Daytona drops. Like, hours later, Drake drops that Duppy freestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And you would have thought that after this track from Pusha, he would have like, maybe I'm going to leave families out of this. Like, you know what? I'm not going to name drop anybody's wife. I'm not going to go after anybody's kids. I'm just going to let it go. And the worst part is that's the family stuff, and the son, that wasn't even the most vicious. And maybe, I mean, depending on how you look at it, like the most wrong verse in that track either.
Yeah.
Because the line he had for 40.
Oh, I didn't even want to mention that, because that was even too vicious to want to talk about.
That was just, yeah.
Just to allude to it, there's a chronic illness that longtime Drake producer Noah Shabib, I believe his name is. He goes by 40, and Drake absolutely went in on the illness. I personally thought that was a bridge too far. But it was what it was at that point. It was scorched earth. There was no topic that Push was not going to cover there. MS, if I didn't mention it because I was too busy remembering the line, multiple sclerosis is what 40 is afflicted with. But yeah, it was, like you said, it was the end of negotiations.
Yep. And I have all that prepared so I can knock it off my list too.
Oh, you had that? Okay. Oh my God, did we have the same list?
We
so far
very well might.
Holy shit. Well, hit me with and one of them is going to be different. So go ahead and hit me with your next one, and I bet this is probably the one where we differ.
Yeah. Oh, you want the different one?
Yeah, because I don't know how the discussion's going to go, but there will be a discussion between us on this. Okay, between the three of us, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so the next we'll wait for the connection, but I'll go with it because when we do lists like this, maybe it's just the way I build it, but looking towards like the first of a kind for the topic, it kind of helps to both set the tone for the rest of what I want to try to do, as well as establish a benchmark that comes afterwards. Like the biggest X. All right, well, let me start from here and see how close everyone else comes to that mark. It's hacky music critic stuff, but it's sort of also a way to kind of orientate your thinking, which is why I'd like to nominate The Bridge Is Over from Boogie Down Productions. It's part of one of the earliest rap beefs, one between KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions, and then Marley Marl's Juice Crew over the birthplace of hip-hop, South Bronx versus Queensbridge. And while I can never hope to completely explain, even maybe necessarily understand that beef, time and place restrictions, of course, I can point to one of the best diss tracks to emerge from that conflict to nominate the foundation, or one of the foundations for the art. It's had an immense influence on hip hop since coming out in 1987. It's one of those tracks that you've heard, even if you've never heard it, because of how many times it's been referenced and sampled. But the most disrespectful parts about it are, first and foremost, the minor chord keys that are the most threatening a piano can possibly be. And then the fact that part of the track calling out the Juice Crew directly and by name is set to the melody of It's Still Rock and Roll to Me.
I think you said it all. Like, this was what more pivotal discussion when we're talking about hip hop as to what the birthplace was. Who can claim that we were the first? We were the OGs. We were the ones that started this whole thing. Yeah, I mean, it's very territorial. It should be territorial, That's a heck of a pick. It really is. KRS absolutely killed it, which is no surprise because I don't know that KRS had a bad track in his catalog.
No. From everything that I have heard, KRS-One didn't have an off day. Ever.
I haven't heard it.
I was going to say, I would believe that. Weirdly enough, I don't think I know this song, which is bothering me.
Like I said, I imagine you've heard chunks of it elsewhere, and that'll probably start jarring some stuff when you go back and listen to this playlist when we post that on kickass.com.
Plugs. Hold on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely be doing that. I'm trying to picture the song, and I can't make it happen in my headspace.
Like I said, it was one of those that I kind of worked backwards to again and kept reading. Like, this is, kind of the point to start at, and then listened to it and went, oh.
Like it all just clicks after.
Yes. And I'm like, I get it now. I see where, because you're going through the 90s in your head going, I see where all these samples have come from. And you'd think I would have written down a list of songs that sampled it to help these things out. But no, why would I do that? Because that would be like being prepared and sounding professional.
I've got a few. The Heat Wave from 50 Cent. Creep by TLC apparently uses a snare sample from this track. Car Thief by the Beastie Boys uses a drum break. A couple of other ones kind of sprinkled in there as well.
Right on.
Jay, what did you sprinkle in next on your list?
Well, okay, so full disclosure, I'm already changing things that I wrote.
Good man.
For just breaking the fourth wall there. I'm not sticking to what I wrote here. But I'm going to change things up because I did have something on my list that I've now bumped to my top 4 that You mentioned like starting at the beginning and going back. And again, more of my attempts at thinking sideways for this. I went back to 1973 before there was such a thing as a diss track, at least as we know them now as diss tracks. And I went with Carly Simon's You're So Vain, which, as she revealed decades later, is largely, at least the second verse, is largely about Warren Beatty. And we'll probably get who the other two verses are about in a deathbed confession at some point. Because
didn't he also own up to that? Didn't he also have a pull of Dave QEA and say, "Yeah, that was me"?
Yeah, but not until after.
Oh, well, yeah, but still.
I think his name came up first, like in an interview with was it Dick Ebersol, where she first revealed who he was, or who the song was about. Oh. Yeah, it's a weird moment, but and she did it like a letter at a time. Like there's an E in it, and there's an R and an A in it, and like it was a little bit at a time. She was dotting conversations and interviews who the song was about.
Holy shit! She Wheel of Fortuned him. Respect.
And the only speculations, like people have, because she dated James Taylor for a while, and she was with David Bowie for a little bit, which is weird enough to think about. But she has said specifically that the song is not about James Taylor or David Bowie. However, there's a whole lot of speculation. It could be about David Geffen, or it could be about Mick Jagger, or Jack Nicholson, or David Cassidy, or Cat Stevens. There's a whole bunch of people who have been speculated for those other two verses. Oh, and by the way, her confession that verse 2 is about Warren Beatty is not suggesting that the other two aren't. So it could very well just entirely be about him. And there's this 5-decade-old mystery about who this song is about, and we'll just never know. But also in terms of the song's function as a diss track, it has been used in subsequent diss tracks. For example, Janet Jackson's diss track, Son of a Gun, uses Carly Simon's vocals. And there's another one that I'm going to bring up here the next time around.
There's a part of me that really, in my head canon, believes the first and third verses are just her ethering Cat Stevens.
Yeah, not opposed to that readout at all.
No, it could very well be true. I don't know.
Man, what another pick that made my short list, which
did
was
it really?
Also, yes, it did. It absolutely nice. Did. Because it doesn't hit as hard necessarily as you want to know, at least not on the surface, but this is like a slow burn, and it's a good slow burn. This is like the slow burn where it's like, I'm not going to say that you're a piece of shit and fuck your family and all that. I'm just going to hit you with the receipts. I'm going to hit you with all the receipts. And then I'm going to let the people figure out who you are. And the people who know, it's like an IYKYK kind of thing. Like the people who know, they absolutely know, based on what she said.
But that's also one of those aspects of the song that makes it work so well too, is that because it's officially or about nobody, it can be used for everybody. You know what I mean? Like there is no, like so the other things we're talking about, there is no doubt to whom this is addressed. But because this is not addressed blatantly to anyone in the song directly, it's about your worthless ex, or it's about the neighbor down the street that never cleans up after the dog, or you can apply it to whatever situation. It's a universal, while also still being, apparently, at least to one point, very personal.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. There are certainly multiple people that are so vain that they do think this song is about them, and it's not. And it's like check and mate, Carly Simon. Well played all the way around. Great track. Great pick, too.
Thanks.
I don't know if my pick is as great as You're So Vain.
I'm sure it's a great pick, so let's hear it.
We'll find out. It's not the one that you would expect to come out of this beef. And I had reasons for that, which I may or may not get into depending on how the conversation goes. But I have a diss track for both of you and for the listeners that's so brutal, so hard-hitting, so vicious, that the artist's mom called into the Hot 97 radio station to ask him to apologize for it. Which he did, of course, because as many beefs as we want to have with anyone else in the music industry, no one wants to fuck with moms. because moms will fuck you up for real. Don't beef with moms. Just don't do it. You don't want that smoke. You got to get your beefs elsewhere. And in Jay-Z's case, that meant taking a run at another one of New York's finest. The track was Takeover, and it was yet another salvo in a long-standing feud between Hove and Nas. I figured that if there was any track on my list that got pushed back, it would be this one, and rightfully so, because of the little track that came afterwards called Ether. I won't necessarily get into that one because it's not mine in case it is on one of your lists, but I will at least mention that I picked Takeover because I think it's the stronger track of the two in a vacuum, because I think the disses are better on Takeover than they are on Ether. I think the act of putting a young Mobb Deep up on a Summer Jam screen with tights and a Michael Jackson jacket was like just the cutest, most adorable. Like, look for the picture. It's adorable as hell. It doesn't further the beef at all. It doesn't do anything. It's just awesome. It's adorable. But most importantly to me, and maybe this is flawed thinking, but if not for how good Takeover was, Ether would have never existed. Jay-Z gave us a seminal diss track that opened the door for another seminal diss track to come after it. He forced Nas to elevate his game to bring us what also was a foundational track in the world of disses. So for those reasons, that's why I chose Takeover over Ether in the Nas Jay-Z argument. I also would have accepted Uchiwali.
Fair enough.
I would not. Absolutely would not.
There is only one reason that I had a problem including this, and so I just kind of put the whole thing to the side instead. And it's because by the time Takeover came out, I'm not convinced Jay-Z was punching at his weight or above his weight anymore. He might have been punching down at Nas at that point.
Totally agree. At that point, that is what caused Nas to up his game and become that heavyweight again.
Yeah, and I mean, Ether was close. I sat to listen to it for a while about that one, but that might be and I think that might be the only reason I couldn't decide and just decided, you know what, someone else will take care of this one for me, and I was right.
Yeah, and honestly, my only beef with Takeover, and honestly, like a good chunk of this record for Jay-Z, is that it's quite homophobic.
Very true. Very true. As is the case with a lot of this subject matter, which is extremely unfortunate.
Right. Like a lot of those digs at Nas on this song in particular, but on a couple of the other ones too. Like it's a lot of like, you know, dropping that unfortunate F word and, you know, just calling him a ballerina and like, yeah, that's my issue with it, but it doesn't make it any less of a good diss track, and it sounds good in the process. This one in particular, actually, I like for Takeover. What I like about it is that it gets real specific. Like, then you dropped this song and it sucks.
Yeah, he went Carly Simon on the receipts for sure.
Right.
No, I'm with you with that. Like, that's one of the hardest things to kind of dissociate with early and current. Let's be honest, music, especially with hip hop music, that, you know, homophobia is, you know, probably, I would say, more rampant in prior years. Yeah. Perhaps than now. Maybe that's just my pie in the sky view of it. But it's still there. It's not gone. But yeah, it especially the word that you mentioned was thrown around like candy on this track, and I know for certain other tracks on my list. So it's one of those disclaimer things, like, you know, it's not co-opting any of this. It's heinous no matter when it was said, no matter what year or what track or what situation or whatever. There's never a good reason for it. Full stop.
Didn't need to make this diss track episode that heavy. I wasn't aiming for that. That was just
no, but for the same reason, I also, and I don't want to flame anybody else's list, but it sounds like I'm safe in saying this, is with one that's also considered one of like the top 3 by a lot of people. I couldn't bring myself to nominate No Vaseline, because that's the disses are incredible, but there's a lot of homophobia in there.
Yep.
Not the anti-Semitism that usually gets thrown at that song. Like, it's sort of been clear to that, but that doesn't excuse everything else.
Yeah, that did not make my short list for that exact reason. I mean, it's arbitrary, the lines are, but
Oh, they're there. They're definitely
They're
there.
very much there. They're very much there. Yeah. But yeah, you didn't bring anything down, Jay. Diss the diss tracks, especially in this episode. I mean, that's the nature of the game.
Okay, cool. That's what we're here for. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. Yep.
Speaking of, Jay, what is your next item up for bids?
I think let's go back to Dan first.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. Because I know the conversation we're about to have. I'm just debating. Do I have it now, or do I move it? And
I say go for it, because it's another one that I think I left off the list intentionally.
Okay.
If it's the one we're thinking about.
Probably. Because I was also going to transition to one that might be on your list, and like you could snipe that later. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been dancing around it the whole time, and in 2024 we cannot not talk about Not Like Us. Because didn't we say a little bit ago that we thought Dre would have learned not to go bring family into it in that whole Pusha T thing. Dre should have learned back with Meek Mill.
Yes.
Or The Weeknd. He should have learned a lot of stuff. You kind of need a flow chart when it comes to Drake's beefs. And you also probably need an encyclopedia sized book of things that Dre should have learned when he tries to take on other artists, because it very rarely goes well for him. Like there's some hits, but a whole lot more misses.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Not Like Us was the culmination of a back and forth battle for months that saw two guys who were apparently rather close say a whole bunch of outrageous things until Not Like Us. And then no one cared about whatever Drake may have tried. Like, I'm pretty sure he did try to follow up and respond to Not Like Us. Nobody cared. Kendrick got personal and aired it all. In fact, some of the other, like, Meet the Grams was probably more personally devastating than Not Like Us. But at the end of it, both Drake and his associates were just eviscerated for all kinds of stuff. And the worst part of them all is that it was such a well-made song. It was full of so many tight bars, and the production was spotless. And it was the number one hit for a good chunk of the summer. I mean, do you realize how absolutely demoralizing it is to see an entire room happily dancing around while you're getting your ass beat? Because that's the exact feeling that Drake is getting every time this song is played.
Yeah. Woof.
The fact that this song exists in the first place as just as much of as Beyond the Pale as it is, on top of the fact that it hit number one on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, like, it was inescapable. It was the perfect diss track to not only say, like, I put this track out and everyone loved it, and then everyone said I won the beef, and that's it. Drake will never be able to outlive this song. And that's the greatest gift of all if you're Kendrick Lamar.
If you need any indication of how ubiquitous this song has become in the 6-7 months it's been out, I have heard, because of one of my other gigs, multiple times, both high school and college bands bringing that horn line out during games. So if it has made its way to the high school band ensemble repertoire
that fast,
this fast, that song is now ubiquitous just with everything. There will be no getting away from it. This will be a thing that, like, we'll just add it to the Drake lore. Drake got in his feelings, and then doot.
I think that's true. And the other side of that too is that it let everybody know that Drake simply isn't enough of a lyricist to even play on the same field as Kendrick.
Well, and that also, I mean, that plays into things that he's been getting hit for forever, because it's not him that's doing the lyricism anyway.
Right. And I think that is now wide public opinion. Like, this is not, like, there's no competition here anymore. Like, it's over.
No, yeah.
Yeah, a great pick that we will be discussing momentarily for sure.
Yeah.
But until then, I thought that it was Jay's turn, because I apparently lost how to count to 3 again. So Jay, please do the things with the things.
So I had teased another one earlier, and I'm going to start that one by asking y'all a question. And that is, What are I'm going to list you 4 songs. None of those 4 songs are my pick, by the way.
Okay.
Those 4 songs are the Foo Fighters, I'll Stick Around, Tori Amos, Professional Widow, 9 Inch Nails, Starfucker Inc., and Gwen Stefani, Hollaback Girl. You know what those 4 songs have in common?
Yes, I do.
As well.
Yeah. So they're not the only ones that have written diss tracks to Courtney Love. Apparently, she has sparked nearly as many beefs as Drake, if not more, because she's been doing it for a little bit longer than he has. But none of those songs were specific in what they were talking about. I'll Stick Around alluded to what went on at the time, but with a lot of nonsense lyrics fluffed in there in the middle. Tori Amos' Professional Widow actually just called her a starfucker as well, which is what 9 Inch Nails did after she accused Trent Reznor of other things. All she said to Gwen Stefani is that she's nothing but a cheerleader. So Hollaback Girl became the best song in Gwen Stefani's solo catalog. But Primus, believe it or not, has my favorite diss track to Courtney Love.
What? Not the name I expected.
No. And this was one of those ones that as soon as we started talking about doing a diss track episode, I'm like, oh, that's going on my list. It's called Coattails of a Dead Man. It's from Antipop, which, you know, if you're unfamiliar with the record, it's a 1999. So this came out years after everything went down. So he actually waited to write this song until there were receipts. But the lyrics of this song show zero respect for Ms. Love. Basically, I'll just read a couple of the lyrics for you. Some find their solace in work or the Lord. She was quite content in her dream. When his eyes, they burned from the bright limelight, he found comfort in the bottle of old Jimmy Beam. One day from the depths of his deep darkened hole, he reached out for something to feel. She offered back nothing but lack of respect. So he left himself out with 2 barrels of steel.
Jesus.
So it's specific about how this went down. And then the rest of the song is about how she cries biggest when there's a camera around. She shows her pain publicly and the ever-growing slices of fortune and fame. Now on the coattails of a dead man, she'll ride high. Fucking brutal.
Damn.
Man. Yeah, that is... I knew about the other 4. I didn't know about this one. That's...
Samesies, yeah.
Much as I like the other songs, and I do, this one had the most visceral attack of lyrics in all of the songs that are about Ms. Love that I knew of. I could probably go down a rabbit hole and find more, but this was the most eviscerating tune with a very almost, merry-go-round circus music, Tom Waits growling in the background kind of style. Primus is weird, y'all, but the lyrics to this song are unrelenting.
Yeah, I mean, she is persona non grata in a number of different circles. So it's not at all surprising to add one more to the pile. But good God, those lyrics that you referenced were, man.
Yep.
And all once again from the least expected place.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
I did say I knew about the 4 before. I actually didn't realize that Hollaback Girl was also a Courtney Love diss track. So today I learned.
That was probably the most timid of them because it was. Yeah. She called her a cheerleader. Come on.
Yeah.
It's kind of true. It's still the best song in Gwen Stefani's solo catalog. So,
For sure. Yeah. That's I feel like that's a side discussion, listeners. If you think that's wrong, then you're wrong because that's absolutely the correct answer. Good picks so far. And I've been mulling over a change in mind. Jay, you've kind of given me the motivation to maybe look past what was going to be my 4th choice and maybe go a different direction just to get a couple more things in the mix here. So I think I'm going to do that. Y'all, Dan, I know is your choice, but I think as we discussed, both of you had mentioned the Biggie song, Who Shot Ya? And Tupac's response saying well, yeah, you shot me and I'm still here. I'm still, getting ready to fuck you up. not the only person who can put together a song to that caliber, not the only person who could make that same claim. Specifically, an artist who decided to just get this out of the way, something that she did not want to define her career, something that she did not think was worth defining her career, a one and done diss track against a true piece of shit who probably doesn't even deserve to be mentioned on this episode. But yeah, let's give all of the propers to Megan Thee Stallion. Track 1, album 1, on her debut album, Good News. It was Shots Fired. By now, everyone knows the story. She was shot by Tory Lanez. Tory Lanez, I don't know, had any relevancy before then. Certainly doesn't have much, if any, afterwards. And a large part of that is because Megan decided to put it to bed immediately. Goes in on Tory and then leaves it alone. Says, this is not worth her time. She's, she certainly has the receipts. She certainly has the toughness. She is certainly not one to be fucked with. We learned that in future releases from her as well. So that is not a one-time message from Megan. However, this is every bit as hard as everything else in her catalog. She has the appropriate receipts, of course, not that she needs them. She has, there are police reports and scads of witnesses. This is obviously something that is out there. But the fact is that she got shot and she came back and said, is that all you got? It's not enough. I'm still here. I'm still going to put out fire bar after fire bar, hot track after hot track. And 3 albums in, she has made good on that promise in spades.
Yeah.
I unfortunately had to admit to missing that. And that's because I thought her one and done on Lanes was plan B. And
maybe I missed one.
Well, at the same time, it's a whole thing where it also kind of feels like that. I guess it may not be exclusively a huge thing to him. Plus, I think, tried to answer. I trying to remember if Daystar was after this record or not. Where he completely said, where he backed away and said it wasn't me. And she was like, "Yeah, about that."
Right. Let's chat, Tori. Let's have a chinwag. So
I could be wrong in my interpretations, and that's why my brain kind of disassociated there.
Let's see. So the Megan album Good News did come out after Daystar did.
Okay.
About 3 months after, yeah.
Okay. So I have all of my order incorrect and when it actually comes to the timeline. Therefore, I'm completely invalid in this conversation.
No. I mean, it was basically what you said. Like, Tory came out with what he said, and Megan was like, nope, incorrect. Like, here's why.
No, by the way, here's how this actually went.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, just like we talked about before with several of the tracks on this list, like, it was a good song in a vacuum. It could have been about anything, and it would have been hot. It just happened that it was a hot song that was also a blistering diss track.
Yeah. Good pick.
I mean, I'm generally in. If you're gonna put Megan on the list, I'm generally in. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was hard to say no to.
And looking for these things, I was reminded of things that are considered diss tracks, and reminded that time Machine Gun Kelly thought he could release a diss track, and thought he could release a diss track on against Eminem.
Good job, good effort.
No, not even that. Needless to say, I don't think Rap Devil will be on anyone's honorable mentions or whatever.
No, sir.
No.
I don't know how you want to put that.
No.
I put it. I refer these two as songs I'll listen to an argument for.
I did have a track that Eminem is on in my honorable mentions, but not because of the Eminem part. But we'll get to that.
That works.
I technically have one more, but since I really don't even want to bother with it, I'll just leave it as an honorable mention. And that's because it's not going to, it has no shot at getting a vote. So I'll just mention it and call it an honorable mention. And that's Marina and the Diamonds track Better Than That, which is entirely about Ellie Goulding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is fun because I love Ellie Goulding. And it's not the only diss track about Ellie Goulding either. There's another one.
Is Ed Sheeran's track really a diss track, though?
Yes,
well,
it's my love.
It's also not great. So
no,
I wasn't going to do that. But here's the funny part about that one is he insists that like all of that is accurate. She denies ever having gone out with Ed Sheeran, but will admit to dating Niall Horn, who is like the whole thing about she cheated on Ed Sheeran with Niall Horn. That's the whole premise of Ed's song. She's like, I mean, we weren't together. I dated Niall Horn a couple times, and okay.
The fact that song ends up on Ed's album X, which is not Multiply, once again, then that leads me to take Ellie's or take her spot as opposed to Ed's point of view.
Yeah, the Marina and the Diamond track. The Marina song, on the other hand, it's called Better Than That, and it is quite a good song. Marina's untouchable. She's so good. But, you know, whether her side of the story is, I have no idea. I don't really care. It's a good track. Which is why it becomes an honorable mention, not a full-fledged member of the thing. I originally intended it to be, but you may as well just throw my third vote in for Hit 'Em Up and call it a day.
I think we might be easier. I was trying to remember. She did try to come back at him with the song, and at least song-wise, he did win that one because she did not come back strong. I just can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, I can't think of it either.
Was, my head. Was it I Got You on My Mind?
Probably. That sounds right.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll admit, Jay, I've not heard the song before, but just looking through the lyrics, I kind of love it already.
Oh, it's a great tune.
Specifically, the lyric that jumps out at me is, they all say she's got low self-esteem, so why is she looking like a cat who got the cream? That's just cool as hell. That just sounds cool, dude.
Marine is a fantastic lyricist.
As much as you've waxed poetic about Marina and the Diamonds on this show, and just personal messages too, like I don't know how I have not just taken a deep dive into, like a deeper dive than we have already into her catalog.
Yeah, you really should
again,
at some point. At some point,
it has to happen.
Yeah, I can't imagine she's going to make our rush here, but I threw it in because I love it.
Absolutely, heck yeah. Are we all out then? Because I think it got weird because we had some overlap, so I just want to make sure that...
Yeah, I'm out. Yep.
Okay. I was like, if my calculations were right, that was the last one.
Okay. Do we want to do the deliberations now and then go to honorable mentions afterwards and close out the show?
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
So let's scroll back up here. So I think the one that we already know is going to go through is Hit 'Em Up.
Yeah.
It was on Dan's list, on my list. Jay, you gave it your vote of approval.
Yep.
So we're going to go ahead and give that one the check mark as our first choice. The Story of Adidon, Dan, was on your list and mine. So that's probably the next one to discuss here. I don't think any of these I'm like, we must have this song, we must have that one. Maybe Hit 'Em Up was like the only one that I would have really fought for, but I'm open to discussions about any of the other three that I had.
Weirdly enough, I was taking some notes while we were talking. You probably heard me clicking away on the keyboard. I was taking some notes.
Nice.
And from what I gathered, the songs that got the most response from the three of us during this conversation were obviously Hit 'Em Up, Not Like Us, Pusha T, and Carly Simon, which is a weird foursome right there. Like,
right. But I'm honestly, if you were to say these were the four, I don't have an argument against it because I think they are. I mean, the undisputed best, one of the foundationals that has influenced so much, and then the two best people, Motherfucker and Drake. And I think that covers the best side of it too.
Yeah.
Poor Drake, man.
Oh, I know. I didn't mean to hurt his feelings, but does he though?
His kid deserves better.
Oh, yes.
He doesn't.
Yeah, no.
I have no beef, no pun intended, with that at all.
Seriously, I don't actually. It might be the easiest discussion we've ever had, but I don't.
Yeah, because I mean, what Pusha T and Kendrick were on both of your lists, and Kendrick was on my short list. So, on both of our short lists, I guess. And then Pusha T was on both your lists. So, like, I mean, honestly, I don't see that there's any way around that. The only question would be if we go with Carly Simon or Alanis, because they were on Zach's short list as well. I say Carly Simon.
I think I like that approach too, because of the A, universality, and B, it's the least vicious sounding.
Yeah.
But like Zach referenced, like, I'm just going to let this sit here and fester, and pretty soon you're going to realize that it's already melted you down to the bone before you had a chance to even, like, realize it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cerebral. Absolutely.
Right?
Very much so.
While Alanis is just repeatedly punching him over and over in the face till he's screaming, please cut it out.
God damn it.
Had to be done.
With the hand motions even.
Had to be done.
Oh, we're all fired.
Yep. I'll see myself out.
Oh. All right. Well, then I think we have our quorum. Our official Fairly Kick-Ass rush for the 4 diss tracks is Tupac featuring the Outlaws, Hit 'Em Up, Pusha T with The Story of Adidon, Carly Simon with You're So Vain, and Kendrick Lamar with Not Like Us.
I like the list, guys. I think that's a fun list of diss tracks.
I agree.
We had some, as always, that just missed or maybe severely missed our top 4. So let's go over a few of those real quick. Jay, hit us with some of your honorable mentions.
So a couple of them that just barely missed the cut. I had one on my list that I realized I was going to put it in my top 4 and cut it right before we started recording because of the same thing I didn't like about Jay-Z's Takeover, and that was the response to No Vaseline, which is Fuck With Dre Day. Actually, Dre's verses on there are fine for the most part. It's Snoop's take that is not. And the stuff at the end, but again, it's all Snoop. So, hey. I also threw, in the same vein as going back old school, I threw Sweet Home Alabama on there because it calls out Neil Young by name in the song. But it's also not true. I mean, it's meh. It's taken on a whole different persona, so it doesn't count. There's Aerosmith's Dude Look Like a Lady, which is entirely about Vince Neil, which is great. And then I threw in Justin Timberlake's Cry Me a River, which is about Britney Spears.
Very nice.
We'll totally support that last one, only strictly because, from a personal standpoint, the amount of times that it was drunkenly sung as a chorus through the dorm hallways my sophomore year of college. Because there's nothing like, because if you think Justin singing that chorus is great, can you imagine what 10 people who have shared like 4 bottles of Jack Daniels would sound like wandering through campus, repeatedly chanting or attempting to sing that? I just great almost memories.
That sounds awesome.
She also responded musically to that song with Every Time, and it's not good, so it doesn't really belong anywhere in this conversation. It's like Drake responding to Kendrick. It just doesn't. It didn't work.
Not gonna. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a response to Cry Me a River. Oh my gosh, I do like that song. To be
because it wasn't a good response to a song, so that's why I probably didn't.
Yeah, it's not a terrible song. It is unrecognizable as a diss response.
Yeah, it's twinkly.
Yeah,
I want a twinkly diss.
Right.
Oh, weird. Dan, what do you got as your honorable mentions?
I'll just cut them down to 2 with real quick reasons. But I would listen to argument for Gucci Mane and Truth, because is there a bigger diss than we killed your boy and got away with it, and we actually did?
God. Gucci.
Because
wow.
Yeah. True story.
Lemonade, that is not.
No. Not gonna make any more jokes on that one. And then I would have also listened to Pet Shop Boys and Miserableism, because fuck Morrissey.
Wait. I don't.
Yep.
I'm fine with Morrissey. He's fine.
I'm not.
Okay.
I've once.
I'm on board. I don't know enough about him.
I am quoted from when I was in college on the air for a while as having said, the only thing worse than the Smiths is Morrissey solo.
Like, he's a miserable prick. But
yes.
if there's more to it than that, then I will abstain from the conversation.
I mean, no, there's not really much more to it. He's just a prick.
Okay, well,
and
but
his music's not good.
And his music's not good, but he's also a big enough prick that it's like duly noted amongst a wide swath.
Yeah, that's pretty undeniable.
I think it's in its Wikipedia entry. Hang on, let me check.
I'm doing a find and page for prick.
Stephen Patrick Morrissey, known monotonously as Morrissey, is an English singer, songwriter, and noted prick. Yeah, right there.
I'll be damned. Yep. Thank you, Wikipedia. Always comes through in the clutch. Noted prick. Do I have any noted pricks in my honorable mentions? I'm sure I do. Because I alluded to it before, the track Hail Mary that samples and basically just kind of resurfaces the Tupac jam, courtesy of Eminem and 50 Cent. Their bars are whatever, don't worry about them. Instead, focus on the bars that Busta Rhymes put out, where he basically tears Ja Rule limb from limb from limb, basically saying, keep my name out your mouth. Why would you ever put my name in your mouth? I wasn't a part of your beef. You brought me into this. So now I'm going to take myself out of it with force. And he absolutely did. It was, if we were talking about just bars as opposed to full songs, this probably would have made my top 4. It's solid. Also, for funsies, Be a Man by the late great Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yes.
That if we had a fifth spot to kind of put on the off to the side of the mountain, I believe the Macho Man should deserve that one.
It's so bad.
It does. It goes all the way around. It does the full 360 from good all the way to bad to come back to it.
For sure. He goes as hard as he possibly can. I'll give him all the credit for that, but it's just, it's as rough as you would expect. It's silly. It's fun. And because we mentioned Courtney Love before, let's go with the New Radicals. You Get What You Give. Also a beef against Beck and Hansen and Marilyn Manson. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if their asses ever got kicked or not, so that may have been a false threat. But
I mean, not by that dude. They didn't.
No, but I think of everyone, I think Marilyn Manson was the only one who wanted to actually do so.
Yeah.
They may have bitten off more than they could chew with that one.
I mean, no offense to either of them, but they both look like they would have gotten the better of by a stiff wind.
Let's see if I have any more fun ones. The Sex Pistols had a couple of diss tracks, and I don't think they were particularly great songs. I just appreciated the fact that the title of the song told you exactly what the diss track was about. One was called New York. It was a diss track against the New York Dolls. The other one was called EMI, and as you guessed it, it was against the EMI label. Again, the songs aren't worth listening to. Don't waste your time. But, I at least appreciated that I didn't have to dig. I didn't have to go on to Genius and look up the lyrics. I just had to look at the title. It's like, oh, I know exactly who we're talking about here. That's nice.
That does help. I'm not going to lie. You're right. That does help.
Yeah, that hits on a whole other subject of diss tracks that I avoided completely. Like, from my perspective, they had to be about somebody specific and not like a label or like a genre or what, you know what I mean? Like, it had to be about somebody in particular. Otherwise, Cracker, their country song, It Ain't Gonna Suck Itself, would have made my list, which is about Virgin Records.
Such a great song.
It's so good.
Also inclusive. Just want to throw that out there.
Oh, yeah.
Third line of the chorus, very inclusive.
It ain't gonna lick itself.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we were, I'm 100% with you, Jay. If we were going that route of a more broad net to cast, then I would probably put Big Dumb Sex by Soundgarden on there, since it's basically just a diatribe against the majority of glamour hair metal bands and their hypersexuality of especially like the mid to late 80s.
Yeah.
But yeah, good honorable mentions, great list, good episode. I'm biased, I know that, but it was a good episode.
I had fun.
Listeners, I think you would agree with me.
I enjoyed myself. I don't know about y'all.
I sure did.
I did. It was fun. But the fun doesn't stop here, because we still have the Ride Along playlist where you can listen to all of these tracks on fairlykickass.com. Go check that out and let us know what you think about our list. What did we leave off? Let us know. It's at fairlykickass on Threads, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. fairlykickass@gmail.com if you prefer the email correspondence route. Again, fairlykickass.com to find your ride-along playlist, to listen to all of these in one convenient place. And, of course, you can find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. So, yeah, just search for Fairly Kickass on any of those platforms or any other ones. If you find one that we're not on, please let us know so we can get on your preferred podcast provider of choice as well. Dan and Jay, any parting words from either of you before we call this one?
Only that if you intend, any listeners paying attention here, that if you intend to get in a diss track beef war with any artists, maybe pick Drake because you might win.
He seems to be the choice. I'm actually going that way right after the show. I'm going to tweet him a couple of times, and I'll let y'all know what comes of it. I have a good feeling.
Yeah, good.